Hi, I'm Nathan. I love to optimize health, mindset, dopamine stimulation, and utilize business systems to grow businesses fast. G'day guys, we're back for another awesome episode, and tonight we have a really amazing guest with us, Philippa Gamse, who is another cog in the component of business growth, and she's here with us today to talk about. She's a web strategist and an author and speaker with some pretty high connections and names. And welcome to the show, Philippa.
Hey Nathan, good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah. So whereabouts? You're in California at the moment?
Santa Cruz, California. That's right. West Coast, right on the ocean.
Okay, with a English accent. So
Yeah.
Origins, yeah.
Yes, luckily. I'm so happy you can still hear the English accent.
I don't think that one's going away. So you've been involved in the internet since the internet was the internet, pretty much. Is that right?
Yes, I know that dates me a little bit, but you know, on the other hand, what's interesting about that is being able to see the trends. You know, being able to follow what works. And, you know, I don't know if you remember at the beginning of the internet, there was all this big bubble stuff with all these companies that got started and, you know, had valuations that were absolutely crazy and not real. And then they all folded. I don't remember those days. So, you know, being able to see what works and what's had continuity, I think the best example of that is email, because, you know, email actually was invented in the 1970s. That wasn't an internet thing. It was around before that.
That was the US government or something for, well, wasn't the internal
internet. So the internet started as a network that basically routed, if, you know, getting traffic from A to B. If one route was down, then it would immediately figure out a different route, so that they would always, it was a military thing, right? So they'd always be able to communicate. And then it grew from there. But email was invented in the 70s, and for many years now. I mean, I think I remember Wired magazine talking about this, like at the end of the 2000s, saying, "Oh, email is boring. Young people don't use it. It's dead. It's over," and it just isn't. And which is really interesting to me, because it's, you know, it's such basic technology compared to some of the web technology. But we still, when you see marketers interviewed now, digital marketers, and they get asked, what's the most effective marketing channel you've got, digital marketing, email is still always at the top of those lists.
Yeah.
Everybody goes, oh, it's boring, nobody uses it, but it's not true.
I mean, it's a way of controlling your database, isn't it? You own that, which is pretty cool with this very sort of flexible world that we're in of, you know, you can get kicked off social media at any stage. And, you know, I've done that multiple times, unfortunately, but owning that database is pretty cool. You know, you're always in control.
Right, absolutely. And that exactly what you say about social media is so true, because people sort of think they own their social media and they don't. You know, and the platforms can choose to kick you off, or they can choose to change their formats, or, you know, their terms and conditions. I think I remember when Pinterest started, it actually had in its terms and conditions that anything you posted, it owned.
Wow.
Literally. Yeah. And it had the right to do anything it wanted to with. And I think there was such an outcry against that, you know, but seriously, you have to be careful with social media. I like to call it shared media, not owned media.
Right. Yeah. As opposed to websites, which you're pretty heavily involved in.
Well, websites is yours. That is yours, right? You own your domain. You can do what you like. You can make it look the way you want it. You can put anything you want on it. Yeah, absolutely. That's where your control center is of your online presence.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so tell us more about what you do with websites.
So I'm an analytics kind of person, and the problem that most people have is that when I say that, everybody glazes over, right? It's like, oh no, she's going to talk about data and charts, and right. Right, you glazed over already.
Yeah, sorry. I'm coming back. I'm here.
But the problem is that while that's completely understandable, and I understand that, because my accountant, you know, I don't want to know how my accountant does what he does. I really don't. But those numbers tell you an awful lot about what's going on and what's working and what's not working, what people are doing, what they're not seeing on your site. And I'd like to say that without access to and using those numbers intelligently, you're basically shooting in the dark with everything that you're doing, with whatever resource you're putting into your website.
Yeah.
So your website plays some sort of a role in your business. So for some of us, that means you're actually selling stuff online directly. For some of us, it's a lead generation tool. And for some of us, it's potentially maybe not either of those, but it's kind of a place where you build your authority, credibility, trust, right? But it's something. So very, very few businesses these days don't have a website or really don't have a business use for their site. And I know sometimes, people who work exclusively with government contracts, like maybe something like that, that's not necessarily how you use your website. But for most businesses, and we're talking to entrepreneurs, essentially startup, smaller businesses, right? The website is playing a role in what you're trying to do. So therefore, it's kind of strange. It's like, what other part of your business, if you're not running analytics, you have no idea what's going on. What other part of your business would you say that about, right?
Yeah.
Anything else that you're spending money on in your business, you've probably got a pretty good handle on what return you're getting on that. So how come with our websites, if you're not looking at your analytics, and more than that, if you're not using that data intelligently, then you're really not doing that. You're shooting in the dark. And I'm on a sort of mission to change that, and at least try to make the analytics a bit intelligible and a bit less glazing over.
Yeah, well, you're right. It's quite technical stuff, and most entrepreneurs are all into the growth, and they don't have the skill set of, analyzing. Personally, it's like when I grow businesses, and my dad's an accountant, and you make an interesting correlation between looking at accounts and your numbers in your business, and it's never been a sexy thing for me. It's just never been on the dial. It's just, no, this is grow. I don't care about the numbers. I just want to grow. But you need, the more I build businesses now, I realize the more you have to have those analytics. So where are you getting, is that the Google Analytics and Search Console? Is that where you're getting all your data from?
So yeah, I mostly work with Google Analytics, and there are certainly other programs available as well. I know in Europe, there's some concern about privacy and so on. So, there are other versions of analytics programs. Google is still the biggest. It's free unless you're very large and so on. And Search Console, just to be clear, is about your SEO performance. So it's a separate tool that reports separate things, but they can be integrated. So you can get Search Console data into your analytics, which tells you things like what contribution your search engine positioning is making to your website traffic, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So what I wanted to make clear is, as we're talking, I'm not here to try and persuade all your listeners to go and fire up Google Analytics and stare at it for hours. That's not the goal. I totally understand. If you're a business owner, you've got better things to do. I mentioned to you when we were chatting before we started recording, I have a book coming out in about a month. And that book is designed for business owners and decision makers. And my goal is to help you think about analytics in terms of what do you need to know to run your business better. Right. So it doesn't mean that you have to do this. It could mean that you hire a consultant, or you probably don't want to hire a full-time analyst. But, if you don't want to do it yourself, get hold of somebody who can do it. But it's still important that you know how to talk to them, what to ask them, what you need to know in English, right? You don't have to look at all the charts and graphs if you don't want to. But what's the bottom line that you need to think about? And part of that is really important because it's your business strategy. Right, I'm the business analyst, and that's fine, but I need to know what you're trying to do, what your goals are, what outcomes you're looking for, who you want to work with, in order to be able to tell you whether the data is, what the data says, right? Because I need to know what I'm looking for, and so it's a partnership. So you need to know what you expect from me, and I need to you to understand what I need from you.
So, Philippa, what are the tangible outcomes that you can actually, what pieces of data can you extract, and what are the most important things that we should be looking for?
Well, tons of data, and for a start, where are you losing people? Where are you losing money? And there's some really simple stuff like calls to action, in marketing, which is telling people what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird, but often if you don't tell somebody what to do next when they're at your website, they won't. They'll go somewhere else. They'll get distracted. You have to actually direct them around. So it's really important to be aware of all the different things you want to happen on your site. So yes, you might be selling something, in which case you want people to buy, but you might want people to sign up for a newsletter. You might want them to watch a video that's got some really important information in it. All of the things that you need to be really aware of. What do I want people to be doing? Because then we can figure out if they're doing it. And if not, try and figure out why not.
Right.
So it's basic stuff like, where are things going wrong? So what's working, what's going wrong? It could be, where are you spending money that isn't working for you? So, for example, a lot of people spend a lot of money on social media ads because we all think that social media is really cool and we should be using it because we've been told that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that you can do with analytics is look at the people who come in through social media, because you can segment those out, and then say, okay, were they good visitors for us? So, did they spend time on the site? Did they do the things we wanted them to do? And very typically, it turns out that they're not.
Right.
Certainly not as much as somebody who comes from your email newsletter or somebody who comes from a Google search, probably because when they're on social media, they're not there looking for you, and they're not looking for you to solve their problems. They're looking for, cat videos and chatting with friends and maybe reading some news or whatever, right? They're not in, and so maybe they saw your ad and it was kind of cool and there was a funny image and they clicked on it, but they clicked on it and they went, no, I didn't really mean to do that, and they're off.
Yeah, which increases your bounce rate and probably isn't
and it also means that whatever budget you put into paying for those ads is really not well spent.
Mm-hmm. If you're doing Google ads or social media ads. Yeah.
Right. And that's not always the case. But what I'm saying is it's important to understand what's going on in your own business.
Correct.
Because generalities, I often find, don't necessarily apply. You really have to look at your own specific situation.
100%.
So you can find out where you're losing people. You can find out where you're spending money that maybe isn't working for you as well as it should. And then if you want to go on from there, one of the things that I talk about in my book is that you can end up finding opportunities to do more. So new products and services that you can develop, or maybe new target markets that you can go after. And I do have some stories about how that happens. For example, if you have a lot of content or a lot of products, then you might well have a search on your site, right, where people can look to find stuff.
Right.
And that is a goldmine of market research.
Yes.
Just looking at what people are looking for, which means when they're on your site and they're looking for it, that means they expect you to have it.
Brilliant.
And if it's not something that you do have, but it's something that you could provide, and I've worked with clients and we've actually looked at those kind of searches and gone, that's an interesting idea. And we've actually developed new products or new little side businesses. Yeah. So there's a lot you can do.
I love that side of things because that's what I do in real life, is find different ways of monetizing the same business. So, for example, one of my businesses called Tommy Sugo, we create pasta, we manufacture pasta, and now we've got 7 different verticals, so 7 different ways of selling pasta. So that's cool if there's a systemized way that you can do that on your website and get the customers that arrive to actually tell you what they need and what they're looking for. That does the thinking for you without without having to physically build the business. First, you need to you get that data. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And actually it's interesting because you say that, because most of the time the data all these numbers, right? They tell you what's going on, but they don't tell you why. So it's interesting when you say get your customers to tell you. I mean, that search engine does, because you can look at what they're looking for. But we should also say that none of this is a substitute for as well really being in touch with your customers. I actually had people say, "What? I have to talk to my customers?"
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
We have to love our customers. Yes.
Yeah, but if you see something consistently not working and you can't figure out why, what are you going to do? Ask them, right? Say, what's wrong with this page? Like, what's going on here?
So that little suggestion that you've given, a search bar, is that what you're saying to put on your website? Yeah. And are there pre-built ones that you can just?
Oh yeah.
Any recommendations there, or we just search for that sort of thing on SEO?
I'm not a web designer. I don't get into that side of things, but I think these days, that's pretty much. Well, the one thing that I would say is it's important to make sure that it's very visible, because sometimes, they're really, really small, or you've got a tiny magnifying glass at the top of the screen that nobody notices. And honestly, if you can get people to use it, it is a gold mine. So, really make sure that people can see it.
Yeah. Yes, that makes sense. And I was looking at your website before, and
which is under redesign, I should say. Everybody's website's being redesigned.
I know, yeah, same with ours. But I actually really liked it because I just thought the simplicity of it was phenomenal. Like,
oh, thank you.
It was just so clean, and you were talking about user intent and directing people to call to actions, and it was just really clear what. You didn't have 1,000 different things. Like I tend to put like 1 million different offers and options, and but yours is very simple, and like, this is what you got to do next, which is exactly what you were saying you need to do. So very easy to follow the flow that you want clients to go to.
There's a lot of psychology marketing studies that the problem is the more options you offer people, they get confused.
Absolutely, and people won't buy in a confused.
Right. I have a feeling that a while ago wasn't there a supermarket study where with jam, and they had like 26 different varieties of jam on the shelves, and you could get raspberry with and without seeds, and different types of marmalade, and blah blah blah, and then they reduced it to 4, just 4 types of jam, right? Boom, this strawberry, raspberry, whatever, right? Marmalade or something else, and they sold more jam when they had just 4 options than when they had 26.
Yeah. And I don't doubt that's all, as you say, the psychology of people, that they don't want to make a mistake. People don't fear of making a mistake. So if they're overwhelmed by choice, they just don't move forward. Yeah.
Right. And I think as well on a website, it's important when the visitor comes to your website and they don't know who you are, say they're finding you for the first time, what's on their mind, and being able to think like your visitor is actually a really important skill. Because all of us see our websites from our own perspective, and I mean, I actually am not that fond of my website as it looks right now, but you liked it, so there you go. But the visitor who first sees your website is going, am I interested in this? Does this grab me? Do I trust this business? Does this business have something that can help me? And so, but what they're really looking is to be recognized, is, this business gets who I am and what I need. And so if you can get visitors to be able to self-identify, like if you're doing various different things, and your homepage should be just telling them which page is for them. Right. So, if you want this kind of product, click here. If you want this, click here, or different types of services. I work with, I work with corporates, and I work with individuals. So click, if you're a coach, for example, click this or click this, right? So when you said you've got loads and loads of stuff going on, I don't know if you look at your own analytics, but
not enough.
For example, if your homepage has a large number of people who come and don't stay very long, it could be because and I'm guessing now, I don't know this, right? I haven't seen your data, but if there's a lot of different things going on and they're not sure and they get overwhelmed and they're not clear it's for them, then that could be a reason that they might leave, right?
Yes. If you do, this might be more user design, etc. But if you've got a bunch of offerings on the one website, do you suggest putting it all like a summary of all those things on the homepage, or is that sort of outside of what you guys do?
Well, no, I mean, I guess user experience comes into what I do, because we're looking at the analytics, and we can say people see the homepage, and too many of them don't go any further.
Right.
So, and then that's the key, as I said earlier. Then you have to go, okay, why? Now we know what's happening, but we don't know why.
Yeah.
But having too many offerings and not making it obvious where people need to go or what they can do that's going to work for them is I think one of the classic reasons why homepages fail. And so what you would do is test. I mean, you come up with the data, you come up with a theory, then you come up with a potential solution, and then you need to test it to see if it makes things better. So, and which is easy to do, because these days you can easily get sort of testing software that at random, delivers maybe your existing homepage or a different variant of the homepage that's hopefully a bit clearer, and then you can immediately see which one does better,
which converts more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or whatever the goal is. If it's to get people to inside pages where they can find out more detail about specific products or services, then is it doing that?
We've actually, talking about data, we are taking a little bit more of a serious focus on that now. One of our head SEO team members has put code on every single page, and we've got hundreds, possibly thousands actually of pages on some of our websites, and so it's a very time-consuming task, but it's really fascinating as you analyze the data and you see where sales are coming from, what blog posts they're coming in from, and then the journey of the customer through to the purchase. And it is really, really interesting, and it gives you that amazing feedback to say, all right, the work that you're doing is working or isn't, so
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And the only problem with that is just being careful not to expect every visitor to convert on the first visit, because very few big people do. But I'm seeing the contribution that, like in your case, what you just said, the search is making to the number of visitors you get. That's, and it's good for the practitioners too, because then they're obviously doing a good job.
Yeah. So what about the search, the SEO side of it? Do you get into the analysis of that side of things?
No. So again, what I do is, from the analytics perspective, we can see people coming from search, and again, we can see what kind of visitors they are and whether they're the right people for what we're trying to do. You can somewhat see which keywords are the more, or which topics, generate better engagement. So organic search usually is a really good source of good traffic, because people are actually looking for you and what you do.
Right.
So I look for a couple of things. I mean, one is, do you have organic search traffic? Because if not, maybe that's something you want to look at. But the other thing that you can do, and you mentioned the search console. So if all of the keywords that I see bringing people to your site are what we call branded keywords, which means that they mention your name or your company name, then that's not terribly impressive, because obviously if people already know your name, Google's going to point them to you. But that doesn't put you in front of people who need what you do, but they've never heard your name.
Yeah, fresh blood.
So then if I see that kind of thing, I'll say to the SEO people, we need to concentrate more on non-branded keywords, the keywords that describe what you do, not your name.
Right.
So again, it's strategy rather than implementation. I mean, I'm the one that comes up with all the ideas and then says, go away and do it.
Cool. So what about the software, Philippa? We bought some ages ago, and I don't know if we just didn't know how to use it or it wasn't that powerful for us, but it's software that analyzes your customers who come to your website, and it tells you different data points, like where they're from, what company they're from. Have you had much experience with any of that sort of software that identifies, I guess, IP addresses and things like that for?
It's a little bit of a dicey area because of privacy regulations, right? I mean, you're not supposed to be able to identify personal, you're not supposed to collect personally identifiable information and put it into Google Analytics, for example. That would be contravening the terms and conditions. It's got to be anonymized. So I haven't used it that much. I've kind of steered clear of it a bit, but I think I've talked to companies that do it, and I know they always can explain how they get around all the legal stuff, or how it is not contravening the legal stuff. Have you found it helpful when you use it?
Not at all.
Okay.
No. We thought it was going to be useful, but I guess actually I don't think there's too much of a data privacy issue there, because it's like the amount of data that it gives you in the end is totally useless. So you can sort of identify if someone comes back, and but we don't know who they are really, but I think it must have some sort of a link with LinkedIn if they've got a LinkedIn account open, or
right.
I'm not 100% sure how it works, but no, we haven't found it useful at all. So I didn't know if we were missing something, or not knowing how to fully utilize the software.
And it's not really my field, but I also sort of wonder whether, if you follow up that kind of lead and then you're going into overkill, like if somebody wants to contact you, they will, right? If you follow up too much with them, I don't know. And of course there is remarketing. So remarketing, is when somebody starts to complete a shopping basket transaction, and so they've already given you their email address because they've started, or they're logged in, and then they don't finish the transaction. And then you because they've already given you their email address, you can send an email or something that says, hey, I see you didn't finish your purchase. And I think that's a little different, because they've already had some engagement directly with you.
I mean, it's almost like social media, though. People get distracted very easily, and the kettle boils, and then they go away and get their cup of tea, and they forget where they're up to as well. So, but yeah, the retargeting side of things is great. We use that a fair bit with Facebook ads and things like that.
Right.
Yeah. So, what are your top things that you like to, if you were to give us, say, your top 3 or 5 things that can make a big impact on small business data wise, that we should be all focusing on and looking for?
Yeah, well, as I said, one, if you're really not diving into your web analytics, and that means more than vanity metrics, it's more than how many visitors did we get last week, and was it more than the week before, because that really isn't telling you anything, right? I mean, because if none of those increased numbers of visitors did anything, you're already no further down the road. So if you're not making intelligent use of analytics, then please try to give it a go, because it will be really helpful. In fact, hopefully really transformational. And then think about what you're going to measure, because there's no point just measuring every single metric you can find. If you're not going to do something about what you're measuring, there's really no point. So don't feel overwhelmed. Come up with 2 or 3 different things that you want to really focus in on looking at. So that means, as I said earlier, really understanding what outcomes you're looking for, and maybe pick 1 or 2 and really get into studying, are these happening to the extent that I want? What kind of visitors are doing them? Where are we going wrong if it's not happening? Right. So prioritize and focus. So get intelligent about it, prioritize, focus, and don't try to do everything at once, because that is overwhelming.
And like for an e-commerce, let's be specific now. For an e-commerce style business, what are the metrics? What are the most important things that we should be looking for?
Well, but I do think I'm just going to keep coming back to it. Depends on, to some extent, on the individual situation. I mean, want
to sell products. What?
Yes, but even so, there are lots of aspects within that. I actually had a prospective client recently who has an e-commerce site, but they've also got physical stores in the country that they operate in, and they've got products in the physical stores that sell really, really well, but they're not selling online. So he came to me and said, we need to figure out what's going on, because I know that it's not the product, because the product sells in the physical stores, but it's not selling on my website. So something's going wrong. So, that's an example of understanding what's going on specifically for you, and that's what you need to focus on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really getting into not just the overall big metrics like how much revenue did we make, but where did it come from? What are the key products that are making us money? Are they the right products? Are there things that just aren't selling that we would expect to sell? And if so, what's going on, and how can we make them sell better? And it could be something like the display, the way you're displaying them, right? It could be like if our shopping cart's being abandoned, what's going on there? At what point? One of the nice things you can do with analytics is go down the steps of the shopping cart.
Mm-hmm.
So we still have this classic situation where sometimes people get so far and then they find out the shipping costs and they go, that's ridiculous, and they stop there, right? But understanding where is it they stop can give you a clue about, well, so is there something that's causing a problem there? And if so, what are we going to do about it?
Do those metrics? I'm just thinking for one of my websites. We use Jot Forms. I don't know if you're familiar with
Mm-hmm.
Jot Forms. Yeah, so it's a third-party form provider that integrates with the website, and you click on the link, and then it takes you to the really, really terrible. It's like I mean, the forms are good, but the system that takes them away from our websites is not a great system. You want all that, ideally, right? You want all those analytics to be on your website. You want all that stuff integrated so you can actually see this stuff. Would that be right?
Yes. So that's a really good point, because there are all sorts of third-party systems out there. I mean, there are booking systems, like you just mentioned. There are form filling systems. There are checkout systems for e-commerce sites and so on. And the good ones should allow you to integrate your analytics with their platform. So that, you mentioned the customer journey earlier, so that it's seamless. So I can follow somebody from clicking on the link that takes me to the form or the calendar or the whatever, and keep on following them, so I can see if they get to the third-party vendor and that's where they stop. And if so, where? Same thing. So I get really annoyed, and I've got a whole rant in my book about this, where you've got, because some third-party vendors won't allow it. They won't let you integrate your analytics. So you can't follow that person seamlessly through. And I just think that's completely unreasonable. So and I can't honestly remember individually whether Jot Forms lets you, but it should. And it would be something to check. You can, whatever analytics program you're using, you can ask them, do you integrate with this program? And if so, you should be able to embed your analytics code in your Jot Form code as well.
Put the Google Analytics code in the Jot Form.
Yes.
Okay.
As I say, I just can't honestly remember if Jot Form individually does it, but it's a question.
Pretty sophisticated. So yeah. I'll have to look into that. Excellent. So tell us more about your book, Philippa. When does that come out?
Well, we're having a little launch party on June the 10th. And so it's called Website Wealth, a business leader's guide to driving real value through your analytics. And it's basically designed to do what we've just been doing as we've been talking, because hopefully I haven't used too many technical terms as we've talked. I haven't blinded you with science and pie charts and stuff, right? But hopefully I've been talking about how, as a business owner, you should think about all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's what the book's designed to do. It's really designed to get business owners interested in understanding the power of analytics without having to grapple with all the technology. And the jargon, because there is a lot of jargon. And it's based on, I don't think there's another book like it on the market. I've done a lot of searching, and I think it's pretty unique. And the reason is that there's a ton of material out there. Like, if you actually want to use Google Analytics yourself, there's tons and tons of material on how to use the interface and what buttons to press and all that stuff. But I still see everybody glazing, well, not everybody, but most people glazing over when that happens. And so I'm trying to, as I said, get into the middle where they're glazing over and say, okay, let's try and make it more interesting by putting it into business terms, talking about some of the outcomes. So there's loads of stories in the book, right? Outcomes when you get what analytics can do and you actually use it, even if you're not using it yourself, but you're talking to somebody like me that can do it for you. Awesome.
And where's that going to be available from?
Well, as I said, I told you earlier when we were chatting, my editor happens to be an Aussie. wonderful guy called Vince Warnock, who's great fun. And maybe some of your listeners know him. So, hopefully it will be on Amazon in Australia as well as everywhere else.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You won't have a link, obviously, for that at the moment, but when it comes out, I'm sure there'll be something available. Are you going to put any info on your website or LinkedIn?
I should imagine.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we'll put the links in the notes, and so that people can. And is that the best way of people connecting with you, Philippa?
Yes, absolutely. That would be great. And there's actually a free ebook on my website at the moment. My website is websitesthatwin.com, which you already know because you've
very cool
been
website.
There. Yeah. There's an ebook on there called 5 Hidden Gems, and it's actually got 5 stories of things that clients and I, real life stories, like found out from analytics that we couldn't otherwise have known, because none of this is really stuff that you can get just by looking at the site. And what we did as a result, and again, no jargon, no charts, no graphs, just ideas and thinking strategically.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for all that, Philippa, for being on the show and for blowing our mind without our eyes glazing over. So you've done well. And there was no tap dance involved, so that was really good as well.
Just as well.
Excellent job. Excellent. So thanks for your time. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Good luck with the book too. That'll be good.
That was awesome. Keep optimizing your health, mindset, and business. Be awesome and make business awesome.